Hello everyone, it's Sandra and this is my indoor kitchen worm bin I call Cinderella. Got her name because she gets everything we sweep off the floor, and you can see my wheelchair brought in some really muddy clumps in its wheels. So she's gonna get that in the feeding zone. Last time I just did carbon and then put the moist stuff on top, and then more dry irregular carbon here, some food and more leaves on top. So I can tell just by looking at this bin that the level has dropped a lot. It's been 2 weeks since I did that. Now, so what I'm looking for is, did Cinderella's worms address some of that carbon? Did it do its job? The moisture absorbed into that new carbon, and the worms starting to make progress on it. You'll see that I gave them some burlap scraps last time, and they are moistened, so that's great. They are also wicking out moisture from this bedding. So I'm really looking, there's a sprout, and there's Prince Charming. So, gee, this bin has been turned around since it was here last. So when I said I put carbon on both sides, I did. And so I will go into the feeding zone, which Prince Charming is my feeding zone indicator. I'll go into that last. But let's go take a look and see whether all this carbon is gone. Now, when you put burlap on the top, you have to assume there are wisps and worms in it. Now, this burlap isn't saturated wet, but I can tell you that the wisps and the worms really love burlap. So I'm going to put it somewhere safe. This is that piece of liner that I was hoping all the wisps and worms would have crawled off it last time. And, you know, it has dried out quite a bit on the top here. So I'll probably just move that into a cup of water to make sure I get all the castings off it. All right. So yes, the level is dropping because, you know, by introducing all that irregular carbon, there were like paper towel tubes and corrugated cardboard and dryer lint and the cotton off the top of vitamin bottles. There was a whole bunch of irregular carbon, and you know, it's all going to decompose at different rates, which is really good. And it's all going to introduce some air pockets in here, which is also really good because some of it was like newspaper. You can see this newspaper strip. If you only put shredded newspaper in, it might clump together. But because I had such a diversity of carbon, I'm hoping that on balance, I will have good aeration, which will also help dry out this bin. Now I want to be able to turn this over. So I'm going to put something here so I can turn it back on itself. Love the sprout action happening. I've got this piece of newspaper that I can use to just catch this bedding as I turn it over so we can take a look. Oh, it's so much drier. I'm so excited. It's almost powdery in the corner there. There's a worm. I know I've put them on dry paper, but I'm going to be putting some moist right on top. So like I said, this end, the worms on Cinderella, they like crawling all over me. I put a lot of carbon in this end. The research shows that each type of carbon is going to attract a different microbial population, especially on the fungal side, leading to a healthier and more balanced worm bin overall. My goal was to get Cinderella to be a fluffy, pretty worm bin again. There's some of the carbon. I think the carbon is doing its job. Look at this. It's not the mud that I found last time. There's the worms in the carbon. I actually didn't feed them a lot of food. Here's my COVID mask that I put in that a friend made for me in the beginning of the pandemic. It's cotton, so it will eventually go. Yeah, the carbon's doing its job. So as I said, I didn't give these worms a big feeding last time. So they are out foraging. Now, this carbon, like I said, it all broke down at different speeds. So some of this is still holding its own, and others has disappeared entirely. So, and look at this, is positively getting to be normal. Cinderella, I'm so happy that this bin is, you know, yes, moist enough, so not dry it to the extent that I'm worried about the dryness. But honestly, look at that, just crumbly. Whereas last time when I was in here 2 weeks ago, I called it muddy. Muddy in a good sense, not an anaerobic sense. It wasn't muddy from overfeeding, it was muddy from overwetting the bin. All right, so I'm thrilled with this end, so there's no need for me to bury more carbon this end to address excess moisture. I feel confident that the bedding moisture now, with this little bit that's left over, like this cotton mask and these clumpier bits of carbon still, the slower carbon, I am confident that this will just finish up nicely. Okay, so now let's go take a look at the feeding zone. I'll just flip this over. Put that bit of newspaper in there as well. Bury that bit of cardboard there. Not doing a very good job of that there. Okay, so now let me just put the newspaper here. I'm probably going to have to surrender this newspaper to this bin at the end because I can tell that I am getting worms stuck in it. So I am going to have to give this bin more carbon. I suspected that I might not before this feeding. Okay, so that, gosh, I have no idea what that is. No worms on it. Let's see, does it break? Yes, it's organic. It almost looks like cork. I have no idea what that is. Oh, it might be the fork. Oh, that's the road trip fork. Wow, that's really gone. Okay, let's see. Yep, not as moist as last time. Remember, I had the pile of sharp needles in this end, and then I added more leaves on the top. So this bin is probably still going to have a bit of a needle problem. But, oh, there's another. These are more road trip forks. Yeah, still going to have a needle problem, Cinderella. She's got a needle problem. That sounds actually ominous. Okay, pulling out some of this irregular carbon that I put in last time. There we go. Hi, Prince Charming. Let's put you aside safely. So like I said, I did not give her a huge feeding, so I'm not expecting any worms to be still in the feeding zone. I do see, I mean, obviously I will see worms in here, but I'm not expecting a worm ball. Okay, let's dig down, see how the moisture's doing. I tried to put the needles right on the very bottom. I am feeling that this end is more moist than the other end. Definitely. Yeah, definitely more moist. So I put the needles down the bottom to make sure that they had the best possible chance of decomposing. There's the pile of needles. Oh, they're starting to soften up. So obviously the worms are in this end, maybe because I fed in here 2 weeks ago and there's still residual. Doubt it, I didn't give much food. I think they're probably in this end because it's more moist. I would say this end still has a little bit too much moisture. Normally when I fluff my worm bins, I don't get like streaks of castings on the bottom of the bins. Normally it comes up pretty clean. And this pile here, yeah, I can feel it's quite moist. Not mud, and the worms are loving it. Okay. There's a big clump. Not a worm ball, clump of interest. Hey, look at it in my bracelet. Oh dear. Don't want to take worms out in my bracelet. There we go. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? Because this end is actually, like I said, look at, still a bit moist. I am going to, see there's a worm on that newspaper right there. I am going to do this. Just love making these executive decisions. I'm going to just do this, and I'm going to feed in this other end where I felt the moisture was under control, rather than push my luck and feed in that feeding zone again. Okay, so this is great. Bring the worms over to this end again. So I'll just take these bits of carbon, put it down the bottom, and put the mask. That's great. The mask will get some microbial attention. We'll see if that is cotton. My friend told me it was a cotton mask, so here we go. So there. So let's get a little bit down the bottom there. I've got everything we sweep off the floor. Prune some house plants. There's a sleeve for a coffee cup, some tissues. I'll save one of those to wipe my hands. That's probably enough because Cinderella had a lot of carbon last feeding. The feeding is coming with some corn husks, so the worms will love that. Then I've got some of my food scraps. I'm going to give her a much more generous feeding this time. That is the end of bok choy. These food scraps are being previously frozen. I always add some powdered eggshells into the last few seconds in the food processor. Some more tissues, and I'll just use this napkin for my fingers. There we go, put that. Okay, so just pull this over. I think Cinderella is shaping up so much better. Starting to look like her old self again. This is now our feeding zone back on this side. Oh, I guess the corn husks don't like me to go down there. So I'll put it right against the wall. There's another tissue just for my fingers. Burlap. Burlap goes back on. So Cinderella, she did a great job cleaning up the carbon challenge that I gave her in 2 weeks. And the bin is looking really great. I'm going to put a link here to a video that I did a while ago that sort of says the same thing as today, is that the answer to most worm bin problems is carbon. So don't afraid to feed your worm bins carbon if you've got a moisture issue or an overfeeding issue, or you're noticing some smells. Carbon is always welcome by the worms. The only thing it's going to do is it's going to slow down castings production. Obviously, the food scraps with the higher nitrogen is going to kickstart the microbes and get you to castings faster, but slow and steady, Cinderella, slow and steady, and you're looking great. All right, everyone. Thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.